Hello everybody, and welcome back to Odin's movie blog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today I come to you from a new location because this is the new house. This is still very bare bones, so there might be an echo in my voice. The video quality might not be as up to snuff because I'm currently using my laptop because I need to basically take apart and clean a lot of the parts of my PC because I had some problems with my airflow that was basically just shoving dust right into the system, and so I need to work on that before I get all that back up and running. So hopefully I can get that started going over the next couple of days. But in the meantime, this is what the setup is going to look like. So sorry in advance for anything that does not sound or look up to snuff. But let's go ahead and talk about this story because this is one that has been making the rounds, and it's one that just makes me really sad because if you have been following my channel for a while, you know that I'm actually a fan of Thor Ragnarok. And in that film, I am actually a fan of Valkyrie, played by Tessa Thompson. I know, let the hate comments start now, but that is something that I've always been, hey, you know what? I know a lot of people don't like Ragnarok. I know a lot of people have issues with Taika Waititi, especially with the comments that he's made, especially after Thor Ragnarok and what it looks like he's going to be trying to do in Thor, Love and Thunder and everything. And so it makes a lot of sense why the movie would get a lot of hate and why anyone attached to it would also. Obviously, people bring up the criticism saying, well, this is not what a typical Valkyrie would have looked like. Remember, this is based off of history, right? This is based off of essentially legend, and it's based off of a people that were, for the most part, mostly white, in fact, almost exclusively white. And so when they look at this, they say, wait a minute, so they also technically race swap the character too, especially if you look to the comics. And that's stuff where, for me, I was able to let go of that because the movie Thor Ragnarok and a lot of other things going on around it just weren't really pushing any political agendas. It was just a fun time. And I know that some people think it ruined the character of Thor because they made him too much of a comic and it wasn't consistent with the first two Thor films. And I think that those are absolutely valid criticisms. I think that you could absolutely be critical of Thor Ragnarok. And that's why, for me, I just enjoy it as a movie, and that's just my own subjective opinion. If you have a different opinion, hey, that's what the beauty of having opinion is all about. But I will not allow that to cloud my judgment with this silly nonsense from actress Tessa Thompson, who says she doesn't want to work with a bunch of white people and a bunch of men. Yes, that's right. It is 2020, and as long as you are a POC, or person of color, you can basically say whatever you want, and you'll be given a free pass by the media and by the Hollywood elites. When it comes to fans, however, we will be not as quick to forgive, or at least I would say some fans, and I would say people that are actually fans are going to be critical of stupid comments like this. Now, before you go off and say, oh, that quote was taken out of context, you're trying to get the hate clicks, and let's go ahead and read the full quote in its proper context, because I think that is incredibly important. So, as reported by Press Association, this is coming from our friends over at Bounding into Comics. As reported by the Press Association and seen above courtesy of Daily Mail, Thompson stated, I want to see work that really looks like the world in which we live. So there are lots of people of color. Look around. Well, do you mean in Hollywood? Because in Hollywood, there are still a lot of white people, especially old white people. So it depends on what world you're living in. If you're living in certain parts of the country, yeah, absolutely, you would be correct. But if you're talking about Hollywood in general, I would say that, have you been looking around yourself lately? And luckily, our boys over at Bounding the Comics call her out on that BS a little bit later in this article. Thompson added, and it's also really exciting not just what we put on screen, but also to work inside of productions that are inclusive. She then stated, I don't want to show up on set and just see a bunch of white people, no offense, and I don't want to work in a company of a bunch of men, no offense. Okay, if I were, or any white male person were to say this towards the opposite, yeah, you know what, I don't want to go and work with a bunch of people of color. I don't want to be on set and see a bunch of women. They would get thrown out of town. They would never be able to work in Hollywood again because there is this just double standard where if you are in a certain group, you can get away with whatever you want. You can say whatever you want to say. You can do whatever it is that you want to do, and it's not a problem. You see, either we're going to be consistent and call it out on both sides of the aisle, or we're going to just say, hey, let people be people. But of course, we know Hollywood does not want to play by anything that makes any logical sense because they got their heads so far up their butts they can't see the light of day. And then she goes on, I want to show up on set and have it look like the world I walk around in every day, which is full of women and people of color and folk with disabilities. I want to make content that feels like that both on camera and off of it. Well, then why have you been making the movies that you have been making? Other than Creed, which I believe this is what the interview was taken from, was when she was doing promotion work for Creed, I don't really have a lot of films, at least big budget mainstream films, that you've worked on that fit all of these criteria that you claim to stand by. While discussing her role for Bianca Taylor in Creed, Thompson stated, I hope we get to a space where there is so much content where women are just what we are, which is multifaceted and dynamic. So it's not noteworthy when one appears in a film. Men are also multifaceted and dynamic. In fact, both men and women are multifaceted and dynamic. No one has ever questioned that. No one, at least in modern times, obviously we can look to the history of Hollywood and understand that there was a time when women were treated like garbage. Yes, let us admit that, and if anyone is still doing that, like Harvey Weinstein or other people like him, you know what, let's nip that in the bud. But wait a minute, you and your kind in Hollywood, the Hollywood type, you protected Harvey Weinstein. You went to bat for him. You called him God. Again, not talking about Tessa Thompson, but basically people in Hollywood compared him to God. And look where he is now. And you know what? I haven't heard a single one of those people that were clapping for him and calling him God. I haven't heard a single one of them come out and make a statement condemning him or saying, I take back what I said or I never knew. And you want to know why? It's because they did know. They absolutely knew everything that was going on. And the reason why you're not hearing that is because Hollywood is filled with a bunch of hypocrites. Non-stop hypocrisy is what I was looking for. That is what's going on in Hollywood, and it's never going to stop. And this is where Bounding in the Comics nails it on the head. What's really interesting about Thompson's comments is that it doesn't appear that she actually practices what she preaches. Since her comments in 2018, Thompson has starred in Avengers Endgame, Men in Black International, Lady and the Tramp, Sylvia's Love, and Westworld Season 3. All featuring lots of white people and lots of men. Avengers Endgame featured a number of white actors and men, including Robert Downey Jr., Chris Hemsworth, Mark Ruffalo, Chris Evans, Jeremy Renner, Paul Rudd, Benedict Cumberbatch, Scarlett Johansson, Brie Larson, and Tom Holland. The film was directed by two white men, Anthony and Joe Russo. Okay, so yeah, you'll go off and spout it in your interviews, but when it comes to you taking a job, you don't mind taking a job that pays your bills and gets you the millions upon millions of dollars that you don't deserve for the sake of principle. That is what these people do. They don't care about principle. They don't care about a damn thing except for their paychecks, but also as long as they get to also spout off their political nonsense so that way they can feel good about themselves in the morning, then they're okay. But I recommend reading the rest of this article from Bounding into Comics because it just lays into her about just how hypocritical she is absolutely being. So thank you all very much for covering this Bounding into Comics. This is, of course, was our boy John F. Trent. Shout out to you, good sir. And thank you for calling this out. And it's amazing because there are people out there right now in Twitter world and everywhere that are basically trying to say, oh, this is the kind of stuff we're talking about. They're so toxic, that fandom menace. And I look at this and I say, no, this is toxic. When you're going after people because of their race or gender, that's toxic. When you say, I don't want to work with because of X, and the X happens to be race or gender, that's toxic. So instead of going after fandom menace types, how about instead we go after together Hollywood types like this? Let me know your thoughts about this and all the things I talked about in the comment section below. If you like this video, smash that like button, hit that subscribe. It helps out a lot. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful day. And as always, God bless.